So we were talking with Robin Murray, the writer-director for We Are Stronger. So Robin, it has been a blessing to work with you, and now going on 10 years we've been together.
Wow.
Doing a variety of different projects, and you've written skits and mini-series, and this is our third movie. And I wanted to ask you, just kind of bring us in to the understanding of how the actors and actresses came to be part of the We Are Stronger movie.
Absolutely. It's amazing how that happened. We can start with Ulysses and Angela. Those are the first two, Vic and Michelle. Ulysses is somebody who has been in a lot of our projects in the past. The seed idea for this film that Jake Allen had was, I think, based on the fact that Ulysses had gotten some headshots and some promotional type pictures made for his acting career that he was kind of looking into doing a little more of. And some of them were in a military type outfit. And Jake realized that he just looked that part well. And an idea had come into his mind about an opening scene that could be a good, movie about talking about hope and healing in Christ in some of the hardest, just emotionally draining situations that you can imagine. And so he imagined Ulysses in that scene. And so, of course, Ulysses is our guy. And he asked, and he was willing to do it. And I think if you talk to Ulysses, he would say that this project changed his life, just as it changed my life, and it's changed everyone's life who worked on it. So that was Ulysses. Angela, you, I believe, met Angela. Let's see, where did you say you met Angela?
So I was speaking at a conference, and Angela came up to me afterwards and just said, I really would like to have lunch with you sometime. And it was interesting because I don't normally say yes to that, but I really felt like God was saying, this is what I want you to do. Yeah. And so in our lunch we had a couple of weeks later, she mentioned that she had done some acting in LA. And I kind of banked that in the back of my head as we were coming to this next project. And I think I shared with you guys.
Right. And so I can tell you my part from there, and then you go back to how But when you shared her as an idea for that main actress, that's who I had in my head. And I was still writing just the very initial script, which ended up being a draft, you would say.
Right.
But that's, to me, who Michelle was in my mind, just looking at her face, So I didn't know her at all at the time, but I had written the part with her in mind. And so... but then it looked like maybe she was not interested, because at that particular time in her life, the timing wasn't going to be good. And we started, getting other people to audition by video, and just nobody seemed right, because again, she was the person in our head, and we looked and we looked and we looked, and wonderful people, great people, but just wasn't what was there.
And for somebody different.
And I think everyone kind of felt that. And she could tell a little funny story that Ulysses had seen that same picture at the time. You want me to go ahead and tell that a little bit about that? I mean, that was kind of interesting that several months, I would say, had passed since she had first been asked to do it, and had said, it's just the timing's not right, and we'd been looking and everything, and then she ended up going to his restaurant. And when she walked in, he recognized her from her picture. And he said, "Hey, Angela." And she was so very taken aback. And he said, I'm Ulysses, and I'm going to be in the project that we had asked you to be in. And I know it's not a good time for you right now, but maybe you could do a smaller role or something like that, And he was just so friendly. And I think that after that, she was just like, oh, wow. And then I believe she brought it back up to her husband again, and time had passed. And I think the timing had become better for her at the time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I think you had felt like Angela, you'd felt, you tell your part.
Well, yeah, because it really is a neat thing. The very day that she went into Eden Cafe, that was for lunch. Mm-hmm. I was at home at the same time, and this thought kept going through my mind all morning long. She doesn't know some of the changes that have taken place. Sure. I really should reconnect with her just to let her know. I was fixing to call her. I had her number ready to dial and push the number. And I literally felt the Lord say, no, do not call her. Pray for me to stir her heart. Mm-hmm. And so it was so powerful. I almost threw the phone down, it felt like, because I didn't want to touch that button to call her. And then I was like, how is she going to know about this movie if I don't share it with her? I'm the only one she knows. Because interesting enough, when I thought of her back whenever we had first talked, I thought she would be fantastic, but for a volunteer to be part of this, she lived about 45 minutes away. Mm-hmm. And with young kids, it just was going to be difficult. Right before we were fixing to send or connect with the actors and actresses, I was on social media, and I noticed that she had actually moved just about a half a mile away from where we were going to be filming.
Right.
So all of those things lead up to, how is she going to know unless I call her? Uh-huh. So all day long, I just prayed for God to stir her heart, still saying basically, how's she going to know unless I call? That night, I will never forget, I got a message from her, hadn't heard from her in 2 months, got a message from her at 9:57, and she said, hey, Carla, I was just wondering if you might want to have lunch sometime. There's something I want to talk to you about. And I would have had lunch right then. I mean, I felt like I knew what it was.
Crazy that after months.
Yeah. So we meet a couple of days later, again, at Eden Cafe. She shares her side of the story.
But that day when you were thinking of her, that Ulysses had been telling her.
And the interesting part is, she said to me, she went home that afternoon after meeting Ulysses, and God stirred her heart all afternoon.
And she used those words.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I just started crying. I think she probably thought something was wrong with me, but I got to share my side of the story. And it was just God's perfect timing for her to say yes. She has told me before, and I think it was out of obedience that she said no the first time. And just trying to walk in that submission to her family and what God had called with her and her husband. And so, but God's timing was perfect. So,
and the timing was right.
And remember that first time she came in and read lines with Ulysses, there was just no doubt that she was handpicked by God.
Yep.
So
she was, And wow, I think Ulysses has said, Ulysses is a great actor and he does a great job, but I believe he has said many times she raised the bar when she came. Because she was excellent, and they both poured their hearts into it. Yeah. And Don, so Don Ortolano, who plays Tommy, he's another person that we've worked with before. He was in First Love, and he is excellent at acting, and he loves using that as ministry. When I first asked him, Jake and I sat down with him, and at that time it had become apparent that the writing process was sort of a changing and flowing thing. I had written a draft, and then as people's different stories came in that were involved in it, I was trying to kind of write those into it and change things. So I said to Don at the beginning, Don, I've got this role for you as a counselor, but but if you have your own story that you'd like to tell through this film, that's kind of what we seem to be doing here. And he said, well, I did have some experience with the military, but I haven't worked through that. So you just write the role and I'll play it. And I go, okay, well, you'll be a counselor. A few weeks, months later, that role as a counselor fell through in strange ways. Yeah. Won't get into that, but it just wasn't going to work out. So by that time, though, we realized that we really need somebody who will play a part of someone who's maybe an addict, an alcoholic, who keeps falling off the wagon. And I wanted him to be a truth teller in the film. Mm-hmm. So went back to Don and I said, well, what about this kind of role? Because it changed. And he goes, oh, I would be good at that. I could do that. I could definitely be that guy. You write the part. And I go, okay. So I went home to write the part and wouldn't come. In my mind, I thought that he and Vic would be sitting together, just having met maybe at the waiting room there for the counselor. Mm-hmm. Kind of at the point in the film that ended up being them meeting out on the patio, mm-hmm. And that they would just have a casual conversation. And in it, Don would tell a little bit, or Tommy would tell a little bit of his story and would point Vic to Christ in some way, Again, just be one more person in Vic's life that was pointing him that way. The story wouldn't come when I sat down to write it. Tommy's story wouldn't come. So I had called Don and I said, Don, it just won't come. And I had prayed about it. I felt like God was saying, Don has Tommy's story. And I told him that. He goes, oh boy. Well, let me talk to Rhonda, his wife. And the three of us met. And I told him a little bit more about what the plot line had come to. He goes, yeah, I've got a story for you. And he said, but I don't know how to type. Like, okay, I'll sit at the coffee shop with you. You talk, I'll type, because I was going to just put his story right in there. And so we did that. And he had already in his mind, it basically become like a well-rehearsed monologue. But part of it was because it was his story. I mean, he had changed some names and stuff. We had tried to make it fit the timeline of the plot and all, but it's basically his story. And when he finished, he said, you're the second person I've ever told that story to. And I said, Don, I am honored. And I feel like you have handed me your beating heart. And I'm going to go talk to the team. I mean, we can't put your story in where I have it. There'll be a rewrite, The team all agreed, no, it needs to be in there. But the story, if you've seen the film, it takes it to a new level, and it is that genuine moment. And it's because it is a genuine moment. And when Don went in to do that scene, he didn't know a couple of those guys. I mean, he was telling this story in front of people he didn't know, some of them. And then knowing that whoever, you who now have seen the film, would also be part of that group that had, he had just never told. But he knew that he wanted his story to be used by God for hope and healing. And we've already been privileged enough to see people that just came up to him and hugged him and cried and said, thank you. So anyway, that's Don. Amazing.
And I just have to interject something there too. That was all done in one take.
Oh, yeah.
I remember sitting in that room and saying, this is going to be done one time. We had Jake had the cameras set up, and you and I were sitting outside of the room with the monitor watching it. Yeah. And just praying and interceding. Right.
We knew that there was something special going to happen that day. I remember standing there talking to that group of guys, and I said, I feel like we're standing on holy ground. Mm-hmm. I tried to get them sort of mentally prepared, and Ken, who had his dog Hope there, he said, if this is going to get real heavy in here, the dog's going to react. And we were like, that's perfect. We're keeping it real. And she did. And she's licked his face because that's what she's trained to do if, emotion gets high, to try to sort of distract a little bit. And so, yeah, she walked around a little bit nervously and then went back to Ken and licked his face. And but, yeah, he got through it. And, yes, through prayer and all. And then we all watched it later. I think a couple of us, Jake and I, for sure, at the same time felt like, oh, somebody needs to go to Oklahoma City and film that area to go along with that. So, so that was Don. And Justina, another amazing story. Another person that came through you because you were speaking at the time. You guys were doing marriage seminars using the last film that we had done, First Love. And at one of those, Justina, who also has a ministry of her own, had felt like, I mean, she could tell the story too better than I could, but that she had felt prompted to just sort of connect with other ministries. So she had gone online and had come up with your speaking ministry and retreats and all, and she had just read your bio and thought, wow, I like her heart. I really want to know her. So she signed up for the marriage conference. And so there came she and James to that, and she just decided, I'm going to be sure to meet Carla afterward and talk to her. Well, at that point when y'all met, and now Justina is a true burn survivor, and she's written a book, which I brought it, and it's The Circle of Fire. And so she had her book that she'd already written years ago, and so when you talked to her, you had in your mind the fact that I was looking for someone who could be really more of a grandmother figure. We wanted a grandmother, granddaughter in it. I certainly didn't have in my mind that she would be a burn survivor.
Yeah.
But Justina would tell you that that she had felt like God was prompting her to clear her schedule for that year because she was going to be in a movie, which is amazing. Yep. So she had come and talked to you, and afterward you thought, oh, I wonder if she'd be interested in at least reading for the part of the grandmother. And so when you called her, I think she said, I'm not surprised, because God had me clear my schedule because he said I was going to be in a movie.
So what happened prior to the week, the day after we met, the Holy Spirit told me to put I do a lot, and Holy Spirit told me to clear my schedule out. It's a movie I want you to be in. So I said, where in the world a movie gonna come from? Just out of the thin air, you know? And I told two of my best friends, and one of them said, Justina, you know you're very sensitive. You better do that. So I cleared my schedule, and I set 2 days free where I could be free to do this movie or whatever. Well, when she texted me that, I was like, well, I don't have to pray about that. I've already been spoken to about that. I'm in.
And so then I started writing her part in, but I read her book. I knew she was going to come and read for it, which, you know, it felt like God had brought her. So I went ahead and read her book and wrote her part around that. And when she came and read, we even had other connections. She knew there's another man who's in the film who's a burn survivor. And you see him in the group scene where Tommy's telling his story, and you see him at the scenes where they go to the retreat, and then you see him there at the end when they're all having dinner together, and his name is Darren, and he and his wife Jill were in it. So she knew them because through the network of burn survivors. So super interesting just the way God did all of that. Bryce is someone who was brought in through Ulysses, and I'm trying to Actors, Models, and Talent for Christ, I believe is the organization that they're both involved in. And he just came and did a great job as the counselor. Bryce Miller. Near and dear to my heart too is Talisha. She plays the part of Jennifer, who is we had that she was going to be her sister, who she went to see her sister the night after their big fight. I don't know if that comes across clearly. It could be just a good friend from childhood. We don't make that super clear. But the reason that I wanted Talisha to be in the film is because I had been in a prayer group with Talisha for a couple of years, just praying for our families and our kids together. So I knew her story. And hers is an amazing story of someone who was just she had a tough childhood growing up and had really just kind of gone off the rails and had, addiction and I think just all kinds of issues. But I believe through the ministry or just through her grandmother's influence, she had come back and started going to church and just getting involved in Bible study and things like that. And she had just sort of started soaking up the word and truly was a different person. I mean, God had transformed her through the study of his word and through prayer. and just through fellowship with his people. And so I was getting to see someone who was a true life picture. And I don't usually meet a whole lot of people like that, in my circles or whatever, that really had a life just turned around and transformed by Christ. And so because I knew her story, and she had also done a whole lot of work with restoration ministries, Celebrate Recovery and things like that. And so she just was very well versed in that. And so I knew, hey, I want to make sure that somehow that element gets in here somehow. And I really wanted her to be in that. Mm-hmm. So Talisha O'Connor, she does a great job. And not, she's not an actor, but she understood that this was that opportunity to let her life make a difference. Mm-hmm. So she just took it extremely seriously, and she really learned her part well. And I asked them to sort of speak into their, just the script part that they had there. So excellent. And then there's the kids. And we wanted, who became Aunt Hazel was Justina Page. And originally it was going to be a grandmother-granddaughter, but because Justina actually had a niece, Rachel, mm-hmm. who they get along great. And I think Rachel's always been kind of, I don't know, she's just been her little buddy. And so when I was saying, we need someone to play the part of your niece or your granddaughter or whatever, and she said, well, I have a little niece, So anyway, that's why she became Aunt Hazel. So and then we had Rachel, who we called Mia. And she was great. The original, again, there were some rewrites that went on there. And she was just perfect for that role. Just did such a great job. Carson came along later too, again, not in the first draft, but really liked the idea of having it where there was a young boy who sort of idolized Vic, and that would be another thing to push him toward getting help when he realized how he had disappointed that person. And you knew, I think, his mother. So how did that go down?
That was really a mm-hmm. neat story too. She actually contacted me mm-hmm. Because she had seen that Ulysses was part of the acting group.
Okay.
The Christian acting group.
Actors, models. Yeah, talent for actors. Yeah.
And wanted to know if I knew anything about that. Mm-hmm. That Carson was interested in possibly doing some acting.
Okay.
And so just got them connected to Ulysses.
Right.
In the back of my mind, there again, kind of banked that in the back of my mind. Uh-huh. And so when we did the rewrite and things changed, and the idea of a young boy just going into just becoming a teenager, going into 7th grade, uh-huh. He fit perfect.
Yeah.
And how many times do we hear after people see the movie, love those kids?
Those kids, yeah.
Just
right. Well, and the thought originally was, I knew that we were working with a heavy subject, and I had thought we need somehow to lighten this up, and so kids, but I didn't know how God would use that. I mean, man, that they just really do bring that hope, I think. And
I love the way, Robin, that you are constantly open to the changes mm-hmm. that God brings along the way. Sometimes it's easy to look at those and think, oh, that's, roadblocks or, mm-hmm. that are halting us. But actually, when it's God redirecting you for a purpose, and you're so good at listening. And that's why at the beginning of the movie, we have that line that just says, I have a story for you to tell.
Yep.
And so your willingness to be so open as God pours into you, it's always been an inspiration to me.
Well, I've learned it through working with you. So, I really have. Just all the projects. We learned at some point that, wow, when we hit something and it looks like a roadblock, it's probably God redirecting. I mean, we learned that with the first film project we ever did, and it's been like that ever since. And so, but those were the kids, and they were great.
Such a great cast.
It was a great
cast.
And there's other people who came into it.
And all through volunteers.
Yes. All volunteer.
All taking
there.
their time, pouring their time out for this purpose and this, and which has given a passion
Right.
for reaching those and sharing the hope and healing through Christ.
Yes.
So, which kind of leads me to a question that I'd like to ask you, and we've heard this before as well, but what would be the biggest challenge that you faced, or we as a team faced, that we had to overcome?
Right. Yeah. Biggest challenge, I would say, is the fact that once we realized we were doing, I felt like, and we all felt like, when you're working with the military, you want to be very honoring of them and the institution and the traditions, and none of us were military.
Yeah.
Bunch of civilians that, as we started working on it, we gained more and more appreciation for the group that we were presenting, and felt a real burden, I guess you could say, to make sure that we did not present them in a way that wasn't extremely honoring and, as accurate as we could. So thankfully, God provided the people that we needed to do that. I wanted to be sure that somebody in the military read the script and, all of that. So through working with the Mighty Oaks, who we have in the film there, they were great to read the script. They were also great to set us up and allow us to meet Toby Nunn, who essentially directed any of the military scenes and helped us a lot with just, I believe he actually was a master sergeant in the Army, so without them, I would have definitely felt like we really were on shaky ground. So I believe that would be it. I think all of us were, wonderful thing that they did is the first thing they asked is your lead actor ex-military? No. Okay. Well, then we invite him to come and spend a week with us at an actual Mighty Oaks retreat, which was huge. So Ulysses went for a week in California, there at one of their retreats, and got to hang out with and just watch that whole healing process as the guys came in, and just each day, and just watched what that looked like. So that, again, when he came back, it's like, okay, Ulysses, what? It wasn't so much a big script change at that point, but it added so much depth to his acting and his understanding and his ability to act that. And some script change. And from that experience, he ended up being the person to write his final speech.
That's exactly right.
Yep. Because
powerful.
Which is another amazing thing that came out of this that we could talk about is, which I'll just bring that up because that was you, our executive producer here, in that as we went along and we were making these connections with different Christ-centered trauma recovery groups, you realized that these people didn't know each other, that they some of them hadn't even heard of each other, but that there were these groups all over the country working toward the same goal who really didn't know one another. And you began to have that vision of using this film as a way to collect them all together and to start to bridge the gaps between them and to create a place where people can go online and get just a list of great resources in their area or online resources to really get help, so that this wouldn't just be a film that would leave people going, well, okay, I'm more aware now, and that's pretty accurate depiction, but yet would then say, and here's how you can get help and what to do next. And so it was your idea, and you created the Stronger Alliance, which that kind of brings us to a cool thing too. And you can tell us some more about that. We had, again, this whole process of writing the script took a while because God just kept bringing the parts. And we were like, what's that final scene need to look like? And my thought was, well, I'd like to kind of bring home the point here in that final scene and maybe have him talking in front of a group and essentially recounting what he's learned. And And so at that point, it was like, well, why don't we have the group be the stronger alliance, and it can actually be the first time that these people meet that you had been talking to. So tell about how that went along with Huntsville, Texas, and their 4th of July.
Yeah, that was such an amazing experience. We had connected with, there's a Hearts Veterans Museum is located there. And it is just an incredible, if you're,
it's awesome.
I mean, it's just, we encourage anyone to go.
Yeah.
It's just a community effort that started by one lady that had a heart for it.
Charlotte.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we met her, and then I said, we got to take the team. And so a couple of days after meeting Charlotte, our creative team went over and just got to go through the museum and talk with them. And from that conversation, somehow it got out to some different ones in the city, and we actually were invited by the city themselves.
Yeah, the city of Huntsville,
Texas. The city of Huntsville, would you like to use the ending of your movie to be, and you could use our 4th of July event. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of, I don't know if you'd say skyrocketed from there, but it was just an incredible. So when at the end.
One of the most fun parts of that day of filming all of that was something Charlotte wanted. Charlotte Olnick, who was the person we were working with, and she said, we got to have the Patriot Guard. We got to have the Patriot Guard. So it was the motorcycles, and they got the word out in their network. And so there was, I don't know how many.
We had a couple hundred. We had,
from motorcycle guys from all, or couples that came from all over the state.
American,
Patriot Guard.
Patriot Guard, American Legion. It was just
all different ones.
And really, I will never forget the moment when we were standing in that huge room where we had, I bet we had maybe 300 seated. Mm-hmm. And I looked up, and in came on 2 different sets of doors. In came the Patriot Guards and the CMA, and all the motorcycle riders carrying these flags that almost hit the ceiling.
Yeah.
And they began to line the room. Mm-hmm. And a patriotic moment that I will never forget happened as this collective action of people that have come together for this cause.
Yeah. Not only the military, but also the police, the first responders, the firefighters. I mean, these literally are the people who do what Jesus did, who lay down their lives for someone else. And they do it knowingly. And they, just like the song says that that was written for this film, I'd do it all again. Yeah. Pretty much any of them would say that is their heart. And so,
absolutely. And speaking
I was profoundly affected by
Speaking of the song, that's a great story within itself, too.
Yeah, it's another one.
We could go on and on, but I think that this is a good one for the audience to understand how that song even came to be. Written by John Sherrill.
Right.
He kept telling me, it's almost there. It's almost done.
Yeah, we needed it on a timeline.
And we were cutting it close. And he was like, Carla, I just need one more phrase and it's going to be there. But I don't think I'm the person to sing the song.
Right, at the last minute he said, but I shouldn't sing it.
I think we need a Texas country sound. And so I was like, well, do you know someone? He goes, nope, I don't know anybody, but I think that's what it needs to be. I'll never forget that night praying, God, help us find somebody who sings,
and
Texas
who can get a studio and who can record this in a week.
Yes, on a tight budget, for us.
Yeah.
And I remember waking up in the middle of the night and recalling the last Veterans Day. I had heard we were at an event for We Are Stronger, and I remember hearing this band, and at the end of him singing, their set, they moved into How Great Is Our God.
Right.
And it was almost as if, and it was literally dribbling, like just about to start raining on us. And I remember looking up, and as he started that song, just seeing like the clouds just kind of split, and the moon comes shining through, and I was like, you talk about God bumps. I mean, it was just, but I just never forgot. So I was like, Lord, help me find him. Didn't know his name. Didn't know anything. Spent from 3 o'clock that morning until 5 a.m. searching, and finally found who it was. Sent him a message, waited till 8 o'clock that morning, and called at exactly 8 a.m., left a message there. He calls back. And by that evening, we had a studio. He was set up. We introduced him. Remember, you came over. We introduced him to the writer,
John.
He and I
together. Yeah, you, me, and him. We just needed a song
because his name's Shay Doman. And Shay goes, well, can you send me a demo? I said, well, no, because the song's not even done yet. And he goes, oh. So he ends up coming over, meets John. The interesting part is that evening, I get a text from John and says the song is done. Yeah,
once he had met Shay. And they discovered that they had matching
guitars.
Tell that story.
Was a big deal too.
Yeah, they had never met, but when John opened his guitar case, Shay goes, oh, that's my same guitar. And it's kind of a rare paint color for that guitar. And it was so funny. They were buddies after that. I will tell you,
that song is phenomenal. And the words to it. So anyone can go and find We Are Stronger, Shay Doman, on iTunes, and the different ways to be able to download the songs. I suggest doing that because it is a song that you'll listen to, and it's
powerful.
It's powerful.
Excellent.
Powerful. Yeah. So
it was quite a journey.
Quite a journey.
Well, before we finish, why don't you tell everybody more about the Alliance, because that is the ongoing entity that has come out of this film where people can get plugged in. Yeah.
It's been evolving through this process. And as we realized filming the movie that post-traumatic stress goes beyond veterans to first responders to burn survivors to those who've experienced trauma
survivor.
And the Alliance, we began to look at it as a way of being able to be a hub for those who've experienced trauma, to find the resources, the organizations, prayer support, and online support groups. So we have it actually now broken up into veterans. If you're a veteran or know someone that needs help, we've got that listed out. First responders, like we said, burn survivors, and women and family. And you can go find help needed for that. But we also have what's called the Steps to Hope and Healing. And so on that very front page, we just basically say, watch the movie. And then we have a book that was written by Chris Atzett and Ranella Atzett, who we used. That was the book that you used. Their book.
They're definitely experts in this field.
Very much so. The Combat Trauma Healing Manual and When War Comes Home, which is through Crew Military. But I asked Chris, would you mind maybe writing just a little booklet that would become almost like a hook? And he sat there and wrote, literally it was just amazing, this booklet that came from him. We've had counselors and psychiatrists and psychologists tell us that this little booklet would be a staple for them if they had it 20 years ago for every one of their clients.
It's a great follow-up because it's called going deeper. We Are Stronger, Going Deeper, because that's truly what it does. You see the film, and then it may raise some questions in your mind about exactly, what is this, and he just takes you through it. It's all keyed back into the film, different quotes from the film, and just takes you through several short, little, very concise, well done little chapters about PTSD, and so it's great.
Yeah, and
follow up.
We've taken that now, and we've got a Going Deeper workbook. That's a 6-week study with a leader's guide that groups can now go through, and they can get them for their churches or organizations, for their home. I mean, wherever they want to start a support group. But also, I'm excited to say that we have connected with a online group called lifeloop.live. And so now we have online groups that are beginning for people that live in, areas that, or they may not want to come out of their home. And so we've got an example on Monday nights. We have a leader out of San Antonio that connects in with someone a veteran that is in Alabama, and then there's another one up in Virginia, and that list is growing. So we want to build those online groups.
That's great.
So we're excited for what's going to take place. And as the future, as Reflective Media Productions moves forward in what we are planning and our next projects and some of the things, we'd love to be able to bring people back to that alliance as a way of being able to build that support. So we've got a lot of things in the works.
Yes, it's been an amazing ride, and
as usual,
absolutely.
I love working with you.
Oh, I've always loved working with you too,
everything else we have.
Carla.
Thank you for this today.
Absolutely.